Let's do it.
Cheers. Thanks for coming on. Thanks for finding the time. Appreciate
Thank you. Oh, you gotta. Oh, I forgot. You gotta. We learned that when we were working at the whiskeys. You gotta tap it after you cheers.
Oh yeah, yeah. I mean, George would crucify us if we didn't.
The first thing that I had to remember was you gotta look everyone in the eye, and once you learn that one, it's nice.
It is nice, right?
But the whiskey, when we were working at the whiskeys, that was the first time I ever click, and then
the thing that I learned, because George had a way of, with all the love in the world, George had a way of making you feel bad that you didn't know something. And so I remember it was like my third shift, and he was like, "Give us all a shot, like a couple customers and himself." And I pour 4 shots and 4 full shots, and yeah, so you already know.
Oh, yeah.
And he's like, "Jay, come here. I only get small shots. Otherwise, I'm gonna walk out of here hammered." And I'm like, "Oh, sorry, I didn't know. My second day, guy." Yeah, you hired me. You knew that I just bartended in Michigan before this.
That's some big shots there. Big shots of Fireball or something.
They did their own Fireball, the Tom Lawless.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's fine. It's cinnamon whiskey if you like cinnamon whiskey.
But it was important to pour those half shots because at least on some nights when it's busy and the regulars come in and everybody's doing a shot with you.
Yeah.
Like I might have done 15, 16, 17 shots. And mine I started at half and they just kept getting smaller and smaller and smaller. And everybody would come in and be like, "Oh man, you're such a..." And I'm like, "Bro, this is my 11th shot. I'm going to have, this is your first shot." So it was important.
I've got a friend that works at Down the Hatch down in the West Village, Lily, and I've taken a couple shots with her. Yeah, you can move that down.
Cool. I'm like...
Yeah, it's very flexible. Yeah, I know. I didn't...
There we go. That's
perfect.
Better.
Lily will, like, I see her do it all the time. She, like, does this, and then I see her do this, like, into the sink. And I'm like, ooh, I wonder how much you actually took.
Yeah. And
how much you...
Also, just get a Coke bottle. Like, fill Diet Coke and water in your whiskey bottle. Don't waste the product.
We did the iced tea in the Jameson bottle at PS 450 when I worked there.
Yeah. I remember like we worked for some nights on Fridays and Saturdays. We're so busy that I didn't move from about this spot
at town, right? Whiskey town. Yeah.
For like 6 or 8 hours. So there's no opportunity to go to the bathroom once you got going. Well, there was, but you were kind of jacking over the other 2 bartenders. Right. And I was on the far side, and we had to cross over, and it's like this big.
Past Carl and Josh, right?
Yeah. And for the most part, those guys. And so I would just not drink anything, and then I would have a bottle of water and like after the end of the shift. And I would wake up sometimes 6 a.m. with calf cramps because I had so much... I had no fluids except for 1 bottle of water. And I was like, what? I've never experienced this before. Not even when I'm like awake, let alone when I was sleeping. All of a sudden, my calves are like cramped up.
It's just like bouncing to like reach glasses and give people their drinks. That place was an animal, and I don't think it's the animal it was. But I remember, I don't know if you remember, I was at town for those Saturday, Sunday day shifts when they first started them. And I would be there at like, I don't know when you came in, 6 or 8.
I relieved you.
Yeah, but it would be me there for like 6, 7 hours. Carl would just watch me do nothing, and I don't know why he was there. It's like I've been doing nothing in bars for years, and then
it's your special skills.
Yeah,
ability to do nothing.
Oh my God, I can make it look like I'm working so hard while doing absolutely nothing, accomplishing very little. And then you would come in, and then it was almost like clockwork. 50 people would just pour in, and I'd be like, "Do you need anything?" Like, no, just. And then, you'd have your sleeveless shirt, and you would just start.
And everyone would start saying that, calling me Mac from It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia.
Yeah.
Because of the sleeveless shirt, and I usually wore a hat too.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
I can see that resemblance.
It got to the point where people would walk up, sometimes multiple times, but one day somebody walked up and said, "Did you ever watch It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia?" And I said, yeah, I know. Yeah. I look like Danny DeVito. And I walked away, and they're like, no. And I'd be like,
nice.
So,
nice. nice. I think I did that with Pirates of the Caribbean once because I get Johnny Depp often. They're like, you know
That's
who
a
you
good
look
person to
like?
get.
And I would just dive right in and be like, Bill Nighy from Pirates of the Caribbean? Yeah, no, I get that tall, frail, older British guy. I get it. He's a handsome man. Fun Bill Nighy story really quick. My friend, I won't name her name, but my friend was at a after party for a Broadway show my friend took her to, and Bill Nighy was there, and she's like 26, 27 years old at this point, attractive girl, and Bill Nighy just comes over and starts chatting her up, and then like 2 minutes in, it's very obvious that he's like heavily hitting on her, and my buddy goes, so you gonna go up to Bill Nighy's hotel room with him tonight?
The science guy? Are you talking about the science guy that
No,
turns...
Bill Nighy, the guy who played Barbossa in the Pirates of the Caribbean.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I was thinking this
No.
whole time you're talking about the science guy that turned super political and
No,
raunchy.
no,
later.
no. I do have a Bill Nye story though. I worked at a spa type thing, massages, manicures, pedicures, everything, and he came in, and you know, celebrities come in for that kind of stuff. They don't want pictures or anything, but my coworker was like, I'm going to ask him for a picture. I'm like, don't ask him for a picture. He's coming in. It's like he's in like a t-shirt and jeans. He doesn't want to talk to anyone. And so she's like, I'm doing it. She's like 21 years old. She doesn't care. She goes up and she's like, excuse me, can I have a picture? And he's like, no.
Yeah.
And then goes and gets whatever he got done. This city, I've bumped into so many people.
Best to just let them be.
Yeah.
Especially if you're working at a place that they might be coming back to again.
Absolutely.
So.
Yeah. I mean, you don't want to ruin an experience for someone because then that ruins business. And I know that she was just like the front desk temp someone, but don't ruin someone else's business.
Also, you're putting them in a position where they either have to do something they don't want to do, or maybe they do want to do it. There is that possibility, but it's putting somebody in a position they don't want to do or feel bad for saying no.
Right.
And so you're like, no good's going to come out of it. Just, you know.
There's a story of Charlie Cox, the guy who's currently playing Daredevil, played him on Netflix and now playing for Disney. And he signs everything, but just once. So like if you're a guy and you've got like 5 of the same poster, he's like, I'm going to sign one of these for you.
Which one do you want?
Yeah.
You know? Yeah. That seems fair.
Yeah, because you got to draw a line somewhere.
Oh yeah. I'd be one of those ones that I'd sign it all. Let's get to a place where people ask for my autograph. That's what we're going for.
Right.
Other than, you know, to sign over checks to somebody or paying my taxes. Like I don't need any more of them signatures.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Yeah, that segues are weird. You made a movie recently.
I did.
Yeah, called Bound.
Yes.
I helped a little bit, but you did like 99% of the stuff.
You actually helped a lot. The hardest part is to get the money, and you were able to help me get a big chunk of it. Now that maybe you might not want me to say that because now people are going to come to you and say, "Hey, give me some money." So sorry about that.
It wasn't my money for the record. I found investors.
Yeah.
That brought in a sizable chunk of the, at least what was it? The original budget, I think it was what, 20 to 25% of the original budget.
Yeah, the original budget,
but
roughly.
Then it went up.
I was like, I want to do 450, and then I was like, okay, we can do 5. Let's stay under 5. But that's, you know, we blew past that.
Yeah.
So that's what happens when it's your first time and you hire people that talk like it's not their first time, but it's also their first time.
Right.
Or they have, you know, they've been working for other places where money wasn't really an issue.
So let's go back to the beginning, because I know like some details and we talked on the phone, but it was always mostly about business and getting done what needed to get done. Where did this idea for this story come from originally?
Okay, so actually this was born partially because of COVID. So I was dating a girl and working on this other film. And this film, the budget was like $4 or $5 million. And that the film actually, she through some of her contacts, got to Sony Pictures. And this film was my Rocky. Like I wrote it for me to play the lead character who was a minor league baseball player because I've been playing ball all my life. And it got into their hands, and I said, "Hey, we can cast whoever we want, but I play the lead." And they were like, "Ha ha! You think your one Broadway credit and a couple of small parts on a soap or a TV show is gonna make you a name?" I'm like, "No, I don't think so, but we can put somebody else." And they're like, "No, but we like the script, and we like the idea, and we're friends of the person that connected us." And they're like, "So we will let you play this, but we will take your script. We're going to take all the baseball out. We're going to give it to our writers. They're going to rewrite it." So my thought, I was like, "Oh, I'm going to lose my screenplay credit. Probably get to keep the story credit." And then we're going to do it for $300,000 or $400,000. And I was like, being like the true artist, was like, "No way, you're not going to fucking do that. No way." And then I didn't say that to them, but that's what I said when I was thinking about it. And then I actually approached some industry people, and they were like, "Dude, make the freaking movie. You will write another thing. You're creative. You'll write something else. Make the movie. Get it done. You're gonna be a lead in a Sony movie." So I said, "You're right." And then COVID happened. So during COVID, everything shut down, and the talks between obviously shut down for that period. And it was then when I'm like, you know what? I think I can raise $300,000 or $400,000. I can't raise $5 million, but I think I could raise $300,000 or $400,000. So why don't we do that? I'll write something new, and kind of as a thank you to the girl I was dating, I was like, "Hey, you're a talented actor. I was helping her with some stuff at that time too, auditions and whatnot, and I was encouraging her to act more. And I was like, why don't I write something and you can be in it? You can be that. Maybe I'll be in it too, but you can be in it." And we very loosely based it off of a couple events in her life, mainly her coming to New York without really anything, and she came to be an actor, and then so that was kind of, and struggling. She struggled a little while she was here, and she had some hardships that she had to get through. So that's kind of what it was loosely based on, and then I just let the characters go in my head and stuff, We got good and drunk one night, and I said, "Tell me all the some crazy stories. Tell me the moments when you moved from there to here, why you left there, and really tell me the pivotal stepping stone moments in your life in that first year that you were here." And there was I was like, and not just like, "Oh, I got fired," like the dark things that really change a person. Which I call stepping stones, like things that you'll never be the same because of this event. And she told me like 2 or 3, and I said, "Okay, that's all I need."
Yeah.
I mean, those are those became the kind of secrets or the impetus for change, or those kind of moments that really. Those are the moments also that should be in movies, and you really see the character grow, get better, or get worse, or that kind of a thing. And I didn't use those exact things, but they inspired me for that character. And then I just let the crazy voices in my head play.
When you're writing a script, like a feature length like this, and you said 2 to 3, is that kind of what you look like, 2 to 3 type of stepping stones for your main character that you're following? Or is there a set number? Does it depend?
There's not a
case
set
by
number,
case?
but I think what's important is to get to those places quick.
Yeah.
Because I think that some people like to show such a long, gradual thing. I mean, and that's fine for like certain types of films. There's certain films that are slow burning films or whatever. But for me, if there's all of these points, and if I show A, B, C, D, E, F, G all the way to Z, it might be an epic 4-hour film. And I said, so for me, I'm like, well, maybe I'll show A and F. And if the audience can fill in B, C, D, E, is that right? Yeah, I think that's right. If they can fill those in, I'm like, well, that's great, because not only am I only shooting this and paying for this shot, and
Right.
shooting this and paying for this shot, the audience has now become part of the equation, and they're engaged in that sense. And I think audience, at least for me, I love it when I like, oh, I get it. Oh, I know what happened. I understand. I know I know what's going on, as opposed to being shown every single moment. Also, like, why wait for 45 minutes in to a film for something to change for that character, you know?
Right.
Whether it's an ensemble or you just have like kind of the typical, you know, protagonist or whatever. Like, if I introduce that in 5 minutes, and you know, in Bound we introduce it in, I think, page 2, like the inciting incident, or you know,
Right. Yeah.
I don't wait around. I just go for it there. But if I do that and something huge changes with that character there, then I can have another huge change in that character fast earlier. So it's not like I did on page 20, now I did on page 70, and now it's almost the end of the movie. Like, what would happen if I took the audience on a journey that showed a whole bunch of steps? And in those moments of this character having to decide what to do, and they choose this, they choose to go right, 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 and it's right's always wrong. Like, when did they choose to go left? Or when did they realize it's not working and they choose something different? And if they choose something different once, okay. But what happens if they choose something different 3 or 4 or 5 times? Now I'm taking a journey. That character has grown a whole bunch, instead of just, you know, always choosing right and then going left at the very end. And so,
I had an acting teacher that I saw for a couple of years, and one of the big takeaways that I had from his class is you don't need to lay it on so thick. The audience is smart, the audience gets it. So, you know, if I'm in a scene where I am frustrated and I'm yelling at my buddy or my spouse or whatever, and it's like, well, I gotta, you know, I'm an actor, I gotta huff and I gotta puff and I gotta like show that I'm worked up. And he's like, they know you're worked up because of what you're saying and because of the situation in the scene. You don't need to show them you're worked up. They're smart, they'll get it. Do you think that the audience is smart enough to get it in those situations? Like you're saying, you're talking about going from A right to F and skipping B, C, D, E, and E.
If the image is done right, or the action is done right, and the pacing is right, they'll get it. Now, I have a tendency to write very bold and then very subtle, and nothing in like. And sometimes my subtlety, I beta test it, and I'm like, "Did you get this?" And they're like, "Get what?" And I'm like, well, I need to give another clue then, because they didn't quite get it. But I don't want to spell it out for them. I don't like things spelled out for me. And so I do have to beta test, because for me, I'm like, of course I get it. I'm writing. I you know, but that doesn't. But you got to test them, because otherwise you're just like, they're lost. And it's okay for an audience to be a little bit lost if they're like, oh, what's that? Oh, you know, what's going on? But if they're just like, if they spend too much time like, I have no idea where I am, who is that good, bad, blah, you know, then they're just going to watch something else. So for me, it's like to tease them a little bit, get them intrigued, but not give them all of it. And then they'll figure it out a little bit later, hopefully on their own, you know. But there are times when, and here's a clap. I was watching Pan's Labyrinth.
Great
amazing movie, right?
Yeah.
And there are story points that have to be clear, and I don't want to, like you said, lay it on too thick, so I'm too subtle. But then I'm watching Pan's Labyrinth, and there's this one scene, and the doctor is taking care of somebody here, you know, and we need to know he's going to administer a shot or whatever, and the character actually turns around, faces the camera, and does all the stuff here to the camera, and then goes back around. Now, in real life,
that's
probably not going to do that. But it was like, this is important to the story, so I need you to see, while the person's struggling down there or dying or whatever. And and I'm like, oh, okay, it's okay, to
Look a
point
little.
up,
Yeah.
point up a moment like that. And in terms of huffing and puffing, your story reminded me, because everyone's like, "Oh, trust your instincts when you're acting. Whatever they are, go with it," And for me, having been an athlete my whole life and always a very physical and lots of energy kind of person, I was always wanted to move, you know, and I went to my professor at Columbia at this time. I got my master's at Columbia.
University?
Columbia University, yes.
New York or Chicago?
New York.
I,
Just 25 blocks south of here.
I have an ex that went to Columbia in Chicago, but she
Uh-huh.
wouldn't clarify. She'd be like, "Yeah, I just graduated from Columbia," and I'm like, "That's a little silly."
Yeah.
But we all got to use whatever we got. She wasn't lying.
I did not. I didn't even know there was a Columbia in Chicago.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, that's funny. That's probably a red flag. You probably shouldn't date. You probably shouldn't do that. I'm glad you're out of that relationship. But I went to my professor, who was also our movement instructor and the gem of the program. He was the little-known Romanian movement clown specialist, and they had all these big names there. But he was like my mentor, And I went to him, and I was so distraught. I'm like, Nikki, I always, every time I'm doing a script, it doesn't matter if it's Greeks or this or Shakespeare or whatever. I always just feel like I need to be moving. And he said, yes, but there's movement in stillness. And I stopped and I was thinking about it, and I'm like, oh, like right now, the movement, I'm still thinking about it, but the movement is the thought that's going through my brain. The movement is the emotion that I'm feeling, the nerves. That's where the movement is. And so there can be movement in stillness in that way.
Mm-hmm.
But movement is very important for me in my filmmaking. And I think it's because I always needed something moving in the shots, and that doesn't necessarily mean the characters. If you watch like Kurosawa films, there's movement. Either the characters moving, there's different layers of it. The characters moving, or the cameras moving, whether it's panning or zooming or pushing it or whatever. There's the nature and the movement in the nature, whatever wind. And we were shooting this one scene in Bound, campfire scene, very dark, right next to a river. And I was looking at the monitor, and I'm like, something's not right. There's a little bit of movement with the emotions from the characters. It was a sad moment or whatever. And there was a little bit of flickering of fire that every once in a while came in. I'm like, there's something not right because it's very still. And I said, I got it. And I went and I gathered a whole bunch of logs and branches. And I'm like, I went away from the monitor, and I'm like, action. And I throw this branch in the river, and it would just go slowly past. It would go slowly down.
All the way in the background.
And everybody was making fun of me. They were calling it a hold for Isaac's fuckery, is what they would say. And I'm like, no, you guys don't get it. I was like, you don't get it. And one of them was like too big. It looked like an actual crocodile. But we ended up not using that shot. Mm-hmm. But it was they didn't get that, and I got it. And I was like, it might just be one tiny little thing in the background that goes past, as a tear dripping down her eyes, and the flames are reflecting in her eyes, and so movement in stillness and different layers of movement, all very important to me in my work.
You have what sounds like a pretty clear idea of what your aesthetic is as a filmmaker. As I would say, these are mostly director aesthetics. I don't know if you would write throws log into background in the script, in the actual screenplay.
No, I mean, you wouldn't do that. It'd just be log.
Yeah.
Log floats by.
And then obviously, I doubt even. I mean, if you write screenplays for the next 50 years, I would love to just read them all and see like, oh, log floats by. Got it. Okay, he did learn something from that day.
Yeah.
But who do you think who's your favorite person right now? Who is making films that not even just in Hollywood, just like maybe worldwide? Who's your favorite filmmaker right now, and for what reasons?
I don't really copy like any one person.
Oh no, I don't mean like
No, I'm not saying
yeah.
that you think I copy. This is a tough question because the crazy thing is, even when I was doing mostly acting, people would be like, "Oh, did you see?" Like you named all these people that your friends met, and I'm like, I don't know who he's talking about.
Right.
Oh yeah, Bill Nye. Yeah, the science guy. You're like,
Yep.
no, the actor, and then this guy, and I'm like, mm-hmm. I'm just gonna nod and pretend like I know who that guy is.
Yeah.
Um, uh, and so it kind of translates too. I don't really know too many, but I appreciate different people quite a bit. I appreciate the Daniels brothers, Everything Everywhere All at Once.
Yeah.
Really just it felt like that. I wish I could have been a fly on the wall in that writer's room when they were coming up with that stuff. And then who said everything? It's like an improv class. Yes, and right.
Yeah.
Who's everything bagel? For me, sometimes I'd be like, well, I don't know. Should we use everything bagel? It's kind of weird that it's a bagel and like maybe we do a scallion bagel. Like, and then and it's like, no, don't just go with the everything bagel. But just the zaniness and the quirkiness and the way they track that whole movie of all the different details, incredible. There's people that I really appreciate their aesthetic. Denis Villeneuve, is that his name?
I don't know how to pronounce it. The guy who just did Dune and Dune 2. Yeah.
Villeneuve. Incredible.
Maybe?
Prisoners is my favorite movie of his.
I actually haven't seen Prisoners, and
that was the best story.
I just saw a clip the other day. I didn't know it was him, but I saw in the caption that it was him, and now I've got to watch it. But it was the clip of Hugh Jackman, and I forget who the other guy is, but they're interrogating the guy who just played the Riddler in Matt Reeves' Batman. Paul Dano.
I just told you I'm the one that's bad at names.
Yeah, Paul. They're interrogating Paul Dano.
Who Jackman?
Nailed it.
I actually met Hugh. Yeah. He's really cool.
Yeah, me too. I met him.
He pulled me on stage once during his show.
Which one? The River?
No, his one man show. I had a ex-girlfriend at that time that was one of the dancers.
Oh,
so he pulled me on.
It was
stage.
A one man show, but he had dancers. So it wasn't a one man show.
It was one man and a bunch of dancers.
That sounds right.
But
is it like one of those Hugh Jackman at the This Theater, one night only type thing?
I think it might have been called One Night Only.
That sounds exclusive.
It was great. He's fantastic. He's an incredible entertainer.
He's one of those guys where I've heard everything that you want to believe about him is actually true.
Yeah. He's a good dude. Prisoners, you should definitely see it.
It's on my list.
So I love the and this might have to do with the cinematographer as well, for things like Dune and Blade Runner 2049 or whatever it is. They're beautiful.
Yeah.
But the actual stories. The story for Prisoners is different. But so I appreciate the aesthetic of that. I appreciate Wes Anderson's aesthetic. It's really gorgeous looking.
It's gorgeous. I've seen a few. I haven't seen all of them, but they don't grip me.
It's different. I would never. Yeah. It's a different kind of acting of just just say the line very very stoic or something. Or it's even leaning more and more towards that. Yep. But the overall is beautiful. Fincher again, beautiful.
Yeah.
Right. Beautiful aesthetics. Awesome stories, but I do have a little bit of a soft spot for the writer directors, partially because I'm doing that, but also
hold on. Sorry, I'm gonna pause you. I'm gonna step out to the restroom real quick.
Oh, do your thing.
No.
coffee, water, whiskey, ice.
Ice. The ice is what's really
It's
moving
probably
for
what tip it puts you over the edge. You know.
1,000%.
Where
The
were we?
writer directors are what have your soft spot because that's what you
Yes.
do.
Well, I mean, I would write somebody else's story, but I do know like it's just different. Like if you get first of all, if you're getting in a great novel and getting some great IP, whatever it might be, um, it's built in. But the writer director that invents that and then crafts that, as opposed to just crafting what's already existing, for me, that's what I love is the exploration of it, the creation of the story. And the histories of all the characters. Even though 99% of it you don't really get to show in the film, nobody knows about the backstories of all the different characters. But I've written them, or I've come up with them, or I found again one or two or three of the stepping stones that of their past that you may learn about in the film, but you may not. You know, they all have those because I think you have to have that secret, you have to have that fear, and you have to have that want or whatever it is, and then the character can come to life fairly easy for me. If you're taking a piece of IP, it's already done for you, and also commercially, you already have a fan base for it as well.
Yeah.
So I do have a soft spot for the person that writes it, creates it, and directs something of their own material.
So immediately coming to mind when you describe that, for me, one of my favorites is Quentin Tarantino.
Mm-hmm.
And as an actor, I think he's one of my favorites. And it's a bummer because I'm currently pursuing acting, but it seems like he's going to be done making movies before I get my break, seeing as he's working on his final movie right now.
We'll
like
see.
their final life. I mean, he says he's going to stop at 10. He's been saying that for years. But I love his writing style, particularly Inglourious Bastards is one of my favorite movies because
That's the top one of the top two I think of his. Hit that and Pulp Fiction.
yeah.
I think are the two.
And both I like both for the same reason that I'm about to say. It's that they are, for me, a collection of interconnected short plays. Like every scene has a beginning, middle, and end. A character that you're following, an opposing character, a conflict, and then a resolution to that conflict. And the movies just happen to be the same characters or the same setting, the same timeline, the same, like Inglourious Bastards, it's like 3 different main casts. Pulp Fiction, it's
you got a lot of
it's 3 or
ensemble
4
based.
yeah, but like Bruce Willis and John Travolta only interact for 2 seconds, but you've seen John Travolta's whole story and you've seen Bruce Willis's whole story separately in different scenes that have beginnings, middle, and ends.
Each one of those characters in that movie, particularly, and they can have their own spin-off where it's just them, just Bruce Willis and his boxing and gambling.
You could take any one of those scenes and put it on stage as a short play, beginning, middle, and then people would be like, "That was a whole story. That was the whole thing." The Bruce Willis one might be difficult because there's like so many multiple like settings and motorcycle and car accident, but like I think about the bar scene in Inglourious Bastards where they're all undercover as Nazis and they encounter the Nazi officer who just had a baby, and
that
so it's like
scene
that conflict.
I don't know if people know this, but that scene is, in terms of length of scene, it is I don't know, it's probably 10 or 15 minutes.
I think it might be long. I think it's like upwards of 20 minutes. Yeah.
And it's just like I think he even described it once. It's like a rubber band that keeps being stretched and stretched and stretched and stretched, and you know it's going to break.
Yeah.
You're just kind of seeing how far you could stretch it. That's Fassbender, and I mean, there's a whole slew of amazing people in that. Oh, look, I I recognized at least one name.
That's one name, and you know what? That's a pretty good name to recognize. He is.
He's awesome.
He's one of the better working actors that I think we have right now. Like I put him in the top. I don't know who the top 10 would be, but I would definitely put him in the top 10.
I mean, let's get you into the top 10.
Let's get me. Look, I don't even need to be in the top 10. Put me in the conversation. Put me.
I'll take honorable mention.
Yeah, I'll take honorable mention. I don't mind being in a show that got snubbed at the Emmys, and then they're like,
Look,
did it get snubbed, or just was it not good enough?
I don't feel that bad for Margot Robbie. I know she didn't get nominated, but they won at the box office, and she was awesome, and she was the lead in an incredible film, and no.
Yeah, it doesn't. I actually agree. I loved Barbie.
It's fantastic.
My biggest critique of it, and I've told this to a few different people. I don't know if I've said it on camera yet. I had a hard time for the first 30, 45 minutes because I had a hard time figuring out what the rules of the world were. Like, do they know their dolls? Do they not know their dolls? Okay, she's a particular Barbie, and there are other different Barbies. Is Margot Robbie the Barbie that's connected to America Ferrera's Barbie that she hands down to her daughter? Or is she attached to all the Barbies that every girl has? Ken is going to surf on plastic waves. Does he know they're plastic? Does he not know they're plastic? Like, I had a hard time figuring out the rules of the movie for the first 45 minutes.
In the same way, like Everything Everywhere All at Once is, I understand where you're coming from, and it's the job of the director and to make those rules clear. And then it's a
little more.
Yes, please. And it's our job as the audience to, at a certain point, just give in to those rules, because so for me, what I appreciate a lot about those is they tested those rules, because I'm always like, let's test the boundaries. Let's create some new conventions and let's keep them consistent. So like once they threw these new conventions towards you, and it took you a little bit of time to understand them and then give into them, you enjoy it. And that's the scary part for filmmaker, because they want to try something new. They want to push something new. But at the same time, when you're an independent filmmaker and it's your first feature, you don't also want to, it's hard to grab that person's attention. So if that film was an indie film and it didn't star these beautiful Margot Robbie and Ryan Gosling and
that's another name,
Will Ferrell, if it didn't have those names, people might just be like, oh, I don't understand what the heck is going on, right? But because you're watching that, you're like, I'm gonna give it a little bit more time. I'm gonna get a little more time. Then you finally understand the rules and the boundaries that they're pushing, and then you're like, this is amazing.
Yeah. High concept and indie film don't often work unless you're really talented at letting people know what the rules of the universe are and allowing them to get clear. Invested. They need to get invested early, otherwise they lose interest. And especially right now, with a TikTok and Instagram reel and YouTube short, like everything being short attention span based, because that seems to be how our species is moving forward, into a shorter and shorter attention span.
Well, once you like have the name, then you can do Killers of the Flower Moon and have a 3.5-hour film.
I didn't see it. I honestly, it looks like it's an amazing story, but I don't know if I need.
I haven't finished it.
You haven't. I see, and you're not the first person to say that to me. You're like, I've heard a couple different people say, I started it, and I'm about an hour and a half or 2 hours in, and I hope to finish it this week. But
I will finish it.
But
I think it's less about I just haven't had another extra hour and a half. I mean, it's the old like sorry I didn't show up. In reality, it just means that I didn't want to be there. Like if I want to show up, I'll be there, right? But I do want to finish it, I think.
I also didn't watch.
Now, if this goes viral and then like next thing you know,
Oh, this clip is the only one I'm posting, like as advertising for this episode.
This
Um,
indie filmmaker, all he does is bash the greats. I'm like, no, I appreciate the greats. I want to
No.
I want to be at the level where I can make a 3.5-hour movie. I'm not there yet.
And people will watch it.
Yeah. And so when I finished Bound, our first cut was 2 hours and 10 minutes.
That was too long.
And I was like, nah, you know.
Did you
but
send me
everything's
that
in there.
cut? You've sent me a few different versions, but I don't think I
didn't
got
send that one. But
because I wouldn't have watched it.
no, and me as the filmmaker, I was like, I need to cut this, and so I did, and I cut, whole chunk scenes, and I also was just like, cool, this is a 32-second scene. Let's get it down to 24 seconds.
I had a 20-minute monologue there in the middle, and you just cut that out completely. So now I'm not even in the movie.
I was supposed to be in that movie.
You were going to be Gordy, weren't you?
Yep.
Yeah.
And I had grown the beard out, giant, scraggly, nasty beard. And I was going to cut like 30 pounds. I was going to go not full on Christian Bale machinist, but like look a little like a meth head or something like. And but then I auditioned. I said I'm going to hold auditions just to see. And then one out of 100 people, whatever, like blew me away and understood the character and looked more like the character. And I started thinking about how much I was already going to also have to do. And I was like, and I cried. I cried because he was so good. I saw my actual character being played in front of me. And I was going to give up this role. I knew, I was like, I'm going to give up this role to this guy.
Yeah.
And I was like, let him audition for another part too. And I'm like, no, I'm going to give up this role to this guy because he's just too good.
And he crushed it.
He crushed it.
Yeah.
He crushed it. Yeah.
So in terms of Bound, where in the process are we at now?
So
last we spoke, you said festival submissions and waiting to hear back about festivals.
So we premiered December 2nd at Dances with Films, which is a top 10 industry festival in the North America. It's a very good festival.
We were the only movie that got 2 screenings. Did that remain true throughout? Because we had the Saturday 8 p.m. slot, which is a prime slot, and we sold out so quickly.
6 minutes.
We sold out in 6 minutes, and they came to you and said, we're going to give you a second screening because...
Well, I actually had alerted them, and I said, hey, we're a New York film, cast and crew, 90% are here. If just they came alone, I was like, it's not going to be hard for us to.
What was capacity for the theater?
135.
Okay,
I think for that they gave us the biggest one, and so I said, and they were like, well, whatever. Yeah, we're so happy for your enthusiasm and your excitement. Let's just cross that bridge when it comes. I was like, okay. I was like, well, I'm just putting that in your ear. That's going to happen. So
that's all you can do.
After 6 minutes, I said, "Hey, remember when I said just in case?"
Yeah.
And they're like, "Okay, well, all we have is a Thursday, 1 p.m. or I can't remember what it was."
It was 1 p.m. because I needed to be at work at 2.
Yeah.
And I was going to attend the 1 p.m. because I couldn't make the Saturday, and I was like, I got to be at work at 2. I can stay. I could come and watch the first 45 minutes. But then you also wanted me to do post-screening interviews.
Exit interviews.
Yeah.
Which we did.
And you had my buddy Nick do it.
Yeah.
And Nick was
crushed it.
Nick was my guest who I had on before you.
Yeah.
And his episode's not out yet. His episode's coming out next. But he's great. I worked with him on a few different things. I worked with him on... He's another guy who writes and directs his own stuff. Mm. So I had a brief role in his movie Adults, which did very well in its release. I believe you need to buy it now. I think he did something unique.
It's a film? Is it short?
It's a film. It's a feature. Has one of my friends, Sammy, as the lead in it, and then he wrote and directed. And then he also has a horror film, which I have the DVD of right there.
Nice.
Over in that. Actually, I'm gonna grab that real quick. I'm gonna
Plug
do
it.
a little plug.
Huge fan. Was super bummed when you couldn't do it.
I know, I was too.
Because I was stressed out about for a moment of like, oh, I got to find replacements, and but it ended up working out, and a large part of it working out was because I didn't have to worry about the person behind the camera and the light. So I'm a huge fan of it.
Where did it go? Oh, I think it's down here. Yes.
Did you plug this? The killer in the house.
The killer in the house.
All right. Cabin in the Woods.
It's good. It's very good. I auditioned for it. I don't think I got cast. I didn't see myself in there.
Yeah.
It's that did you ever watch The Office?
He was the actor not in the house.
Did you ever watch The Office where they come and do the Sweeney Todd thing inside the office? Is like
No.
The whole cast of Sweeney Todd, Andy Bernard, the Ed Helms character, comes in with the whole cast of Sweeney Todd. He's doing a production, and then Steve Carell's character, Michael Scott, is like, "Yeah, that's great. I auditioned for this. What role am I playing?" And everyone's just like there in costume, like ready to open tomorrow night, and they're like, "Ugh."
Yeah, but
that's
good on you for still being not a bitter actor and supporting your friend.
No, absolutely not. It's the same thing that I tell everyone. I've been telling them for years now, and I'm 33. Alan Rickman and Denzel Washington and what's from Mad Men? John Hamm, Idris Elba. These are all guys that got their start successfully.
Yeah.
Like started acting in a way that paid their bills and they didn't need to do something else. So we'll call that success in terms of what I'm aiming for. In their late 30s, early 40s.
Mm-hmm.
I think Alan Rickman was 39 when he got cast in Die Hard, and that was kind of considered his break. And then, it came out when he was 40, 41. So if I'm on that track, I wouldn't mind having Alan Rickman's career. I wouldn't mind having Denzel Washington's career.
Version of Golden Girls one day with me and you in it.
I think that's going to happen.
Yeah.
Absolutely. The golden boys, golden guys.
The gray-haired boys.
We can't... we'd be silver foxes.
Yeah.
You have to start looking your age, though, because you look younger than I am, and you're at least 3 months older than me.
Yeah. I am older than you. We'll leave it at that.
Yeah. You're 96 years old.
It's from all the whiskey pickling my insides.
See, that can't be true because
it's because my mom's Japanese. That's absolutely the only reason why. Yeah, that's it. And I try to eat as much fish as I can.
Does that help? Is that really?
It's good for you.
I mean, I love fish. So with Bound,
So where are we at? Where Bound is.
Yeah.
So Bound premiered at Dances with Films, and we're in the festival. I wanted to do like 8 or 10 or 12 months of festivals. The way the festivals go is that once you give up your world premiere card, it makes it much difficult.
Much more difficult.
It makes it much
Difficultier.
more difficult to get into other top tier festivals. There's a lot of the top tier festival, the big dogs that only will take world premieres. And it's kind of like a balance because yes, you can also submit to tier 3, tier 4, tier 5 festivals and get in. And that kind of looks cool because you get lots of laurels and you get some screen time, but you're getting screen time in either small houses or places that there will not be industry. So it's I've spoken to different people about this. We have a festival strategist who we use, who has said tier 1, tier 2 festivals essentially, and like these are the ones that can help you. They're going to be harder to get in. It's just
Yeah.
that simple, especially once you give up that world premiere card. Um, and then I've also spoken to another person who was like, hey, just do a bunch of the small ones. Collect a bunch of awards from these ones that are nobody knows about, because on IMDb it doesn't say. It just says awards.
Yeah.
It doesn't say
It says
best actor, an Oscar, best directing, Academy
selection
Award.
at 20 different festivals.
No, it just
Okay, yeah.
says like 18 awards, 23 nominees, and then nobody's really looking. So there's a balance. I still am kind of like, no, we're going to shoot for the stars, and then if we don't get in, because it is very difficult. Some of these festivals have 17,500 at Sundance. There's 3 slots for narrative features or whatever,
You were telling me a couple months ago that big ones like Cannes and Sundance and Tribeca kind of have most of the slots already bought ahead of time.
Yeah, they've been tracking films from the big companies, also, because of the relationships that they've have.
Yeah.
As much as people want to say that there's certain festivals that are still considered independent festivals, like, yeah, it's an indie movie, but that indie movie had a $50 million budget, and it's essentially a studio almost making that movie now. And so it's just hard, because at one point they probably were like that. They were like, let's go for the guys that just have a 5-person crew and holding up flashlights for lights, and that's what we're really going for. But after a certain point, they're like, well, we want to make some money doing this. We want this thing to build, so we'll just sneak in this one movie with this one A-lister. And then they see how many more industry and reviewers come for that one show, that one film, because of the A-listers in it. And they were, 15 reviewers for just that, and nothing else gets reviewed. And they're like, it's just kind of natural.
Yeah.
To kind of, so Dances Films was one of them that is still like, excuse me, no, we're just truly indie, like no A-listers. And to the point where now they have like a separate category if there is somebody that has.
So that's why you cut my 20-minute monologue.
Yeah.
No A-listers. Got it.
Yep,
That makes
yep,
more
yep.
sense. So now I understand anything to make the movie better.
Exactly. So we're in that phase. During that phase, I've been taking calls with distributors, sales reps, producer reps, just to learn that world. Because I thought the hustle was getting the movie done. Well, at first I thought the hustle was finishing that first draft, and then the hustle was rewriting it, so crafting that through rewrites. And then the hustle was, okay, let's raise some money. And then the hustle was, all right, let's crew it up. Let's shoot this thing. And then it was, all right, post-production, learn about that. And then now that it's done, it's like, oh, we got the festivals, everything's lined up, the marketing's for the posters done, the trailer's done, all of these things are done. And then the film comes out, and it's like, no, the real hustle starts afterwards. If it's an indie film, if it's Margot Robbie's in it, then it's a little bit different. But like for a true indie film with no super notoriety,
Yeah.
an actor with then without huge notoriety, wow, the whiskey's finally taking effect here. I'm just gonna invent some words now.
I mean, you're a writer, so that works.
Yeah, I mean, Shakespeare invented how many words? Who knows?
I think I saw somewhere he invented somewhere around like 300 to 500 words.
Way more than that.
You think?
I
like
think
invented
so.
3 to like that's a lot of words to just
I guarantee it's higher than that.
Do you think, this is a little side tangent, do you think Shakespeare was one guy, or do you think he was a collection of guys? And I don't mean guys like men. I think just like a group of people. Because I don't
heard spend too much time on that, but I did have one of my teachers was like the famous voice teacher. I think she believed that it wasn't him.
Like it wasn't the person William Shakespeare.
It could be
a collective, or
I don't think it really matters. He wrote a ton of things. A lot of them are based on other stories before, anyways. But
there's only 6 stories.
That what?
Are you a believer of this?
What?
There's only 6 real stories in the world. like any movie, any screenplay, any play is just a variation of something different. You know how Lion
Yeah.
King is a variation of Hamlet, which is a variation of whatever.
Sure. Like, yes,
you know,
there's
Hero's Journey into Darkness, two war-torn lovers, and then I don't know whatever the other four are.
Mhm.
I don't know.
I mean,
Whiskey's doing its job.
every time I think that yes, there are common tropes, there's common themes, there's common, there's um, emotional needs that these characters are going for, whether it's love or revenge, and I think that there's a select amount, but there's an infinite possibility of different ways to utilize that. And for me, it's always important to find the new, unique take on it. So, like, in Jerry Maguire, like how many movies says "I love you," and in Jerry Maguire, it's "You had me at hello" or whatever it was, or in Ghost, it was "Ditto."
Yeah.
That's the way they say "I love you." So I think it's important to find that new take on it.
Those are both movies from the late 80s, early 90s.
Yeah.
What's the last movie that actually surprised you in the way that it delivered on something that might not be original, but like a trope? What's the last thing that was like, oh, that was well done in a way that I'd not seen before?
So I love movies where I'm following it, but I don't know what's happening. So those movies that end up doing things like that are usually end up being the movies that I remember the most. So Old Boy, the Korean version, not the American version.
The better version.
The only version, really. Don't if you watch the American version first, you ruin it because
you've ruined because it still gives you the surprises, but it gives it to you in a more vanilla, less enjoyable way.
It's just not as good.
Yeah.
And let's see other.
I like Josh Brolin and Elizabeth Olsen. It's just not
that. But the thing is, like that story is what's. I don't care who the actors are. I didn't know who any of the actors in the Korean version, but the story.
That's not my point. I'm just saying, like, I don't think they did a bad job as actors. I think it was just.
They were fine.
It's the same reason why I think this Avatar: The Last Airbender live action show isn't going to be very good.
I don't know this one.
Do you know the animated version from back in like 2005? Oh, it's one of the best shows ever. It's a 3-season show that Nickelodeon did in a world where there are 4 nations and there are people who are gifted in the ability to bend the element from that nation. So fire, earth, air, and water. And the avatar is a person who has a spiritual connection to the spirit world. And like the Dalai Lama, in theory, when they die, they are reborn in a new life, a new person. But it's the same spirit throughout. And they can control all 4 elements. And so the whole story centers around the avatar disappearing when the Fire Nation decides they're going to take over the world. They're going to take over everything. They're going to destroy everyone that opposes. They're like the imposing bad force. And he disappears. The avatar disappears. What happens is he runs away and he gets caught in a storm and goes into a reflexive or like a reflex, like avatar state hibernation mode, where he freezes himself in a ball of ice and disappears. And so the Fire Nation takes over part of the world, and then he comes back. And the whole story is he's awoken and he needs to save the world. I've said it on this show before. That's a cool thing that I haven't said before. I've said it on this show before. It is one of the best written and best executed shows I've ever watched. And I don't mean kids show. I don't mean animated show. I mean TV show of all time.
I'll have to check it out.
It is currently on Netflix. I also have the DVDs right over there. I would lend them to you if you don't have Netflix.
Did they cut your 20-minute monologue from that one as well?
I control what gets cut from this show. I'm going to post just this monologue to YouTube and tag the creators of the show. It's honest. I've shown it to multiple people. It has become their favorite show. I've been texting with a buddy.
Check it out.
It's very well done. But what my problem is, it's 3 seasons. They told the story, start to finish, 3 seasons. They didn't need to go more than that. Netflix has decided they wanted to do a live action adaptation, which, if you're a fan of anime, you've seen some live action adaptations. I don't think it works because there are things that anime does, there are things that animation does that just doesn't work in a live action translation.
I just think that the rules, like you were talking earlier about the conventions and the rules, they can just be like exploded in tenfold in animation.
Right.
So you can have a rat that is a chef and controls the human that doesn't know how to cook.
They will make a live action Ratatouille. You know they're going to.
But
they're on Moana and Lilo and Stitch right now.
But I think that like if I try not to judge anything until I actually see it, or I don't try not to judge anything, period. But I try not to like make my assumptions of if it's gonna be good or bad until I see something. But I will say that like if it brings something new, then fantastic. But if it's just like, hey, can we do this, but live action version of it, like then I'm not interested. Not because it might not be good, but I've already seen it.
Right.
You know, I very rarely watch a movie twice. Hardly ever.
Really?
Exactly.
You don't have movies that you go back and enjoy watching multiple times.
The only time I end up doing that is if I'm like, oh, you gotta check out Airbender. We're gonna have a bender while watching Airbender.
Right.
Right. See what I did there?
That was cute.
Like then
you want to do that? Like, what are you doing in 20 minutes?
And so that's like usually the only time I don't go back and I have people that are like, I know people that are like, oh, I'm gonna read this book again. Well, didn't you read that? Oh yeah, I've read like 5 times, but each time I learned something new.
Yeah.
And I'm like, what you learned there? That's cool. That's your thing. That's what you want to do. That's fine. But for me, I want to watch something and just totally be exposed to something that I don't know of. That's kind of that's why I like movies that are super surprising.
Right.
And they aren't formulaic and they aren't they will have a structure to them. Every film does, but it's not the templated Mad Lib that some of the films are now, and that I see. So like,
so what's your favorite movie, for example?
Oh yeah, here's my list, and and there are very few American ones, but there are some.
That's fine.
But so I said Old Boy, City of God,
okay,
Brazilian movie. I like movies that like, I don't want to say hurt, but they like hit you and emotionally and kind of punch you in the guts.
That's enough for my follow up, if you don't mind. How many times have you seen Old Boy?
I've seen it, I don't know, maybe 3 or 4 times total. And once I actually went to the theater because they pulled it out and redid it.
Okay.
Alamo Drafthouse. So
how many times have you seen City of God?
2 or 3 times. 3 times maybe.
How long have these been your favorite movies? Because Old Boy came out in what, 2011? The Korean version, 2011 or maybe 2008?
I think it might be older than that.
I think we're just in 2024 and that.
Oh, maybe. I don't know. I don't even know what day today is. So.
Thursday. 2008 is 16 years ago.
All right, but maybe I don't know. I don't know. I don't keep track of stuff like that.
I'm just because I graduated high school in 2008 and
cool.
So
me too.
I'm okay. So my favorite movie of all time is Ocean's 11.
Okay, so that's
it's not
mine.
It's not particularly.
It's not in my
amazing.
10.
That's fine.
It's not even in my 11.
That's fine. Hey, wow. Okay, so that's rude. Let's not forget whose show you're on.
Everybody's allowed to like and love whatever they want, no matter how good or bad it may be. No, I like Ocean's 11.
Ocean's 11. Look, it's not.
It's great. fantastic
It's
fun. Super fun.
It's super fun. All of the actors are exactly what they need to be. They're all. I mean, George Clooney, good actor. Brad Pitt, good actor. Matt Damon, good actor. Don Cheadle, good actor. Bernie Mac, great actor. Love him, miss him. It was a great ensemble heist movie.
Yeah.
And I love the way it was filmed. I love the way it was edited.
I don't remember which one it was.
The original.
It had like 8, then 9, then 10, then they just
No,
added
they
a
didn't
person?
have 8. 8 doesn't count. And that might sound offensive because 8 was the all-female version.
Oh, wow.
But-
Okay, see.
Well, no, because
I didn't.
it was 11 first,
Okay.
and then 12 and 13.
Okay.
12 also doesn't count because it's just bad. 11 and 13 are good. 12 and 8 are not.
Got it. I'll watch Airbender
50%.
first.
50%. That's not bad.
50%.
But-
man. That's a good batting average. You're making a lot of money.
You're making a lot of money.
Yep.
There are rumors that they're doing a prequel. So George Clooney was Danny Ocean. And Sandra Bullock was, I forget her character's name, but George Clooney and Sandra Bullock were brother-sister. In Ocean's 8, she gets out of prison and it turns out that she's Danny Ocean's sister. There's a prequel movie, you're going to love this, with some super beautiful people playing their parents in their timeline. So young.
They did just go like Ocean's 4 now?
They haven't given it a name yet, but they've given it a cast.
Okay.
Margot Robbie and Ryan Gosling.
Okay, so it's going to be at least Ocean's 2.
I would think. Well, it's gonna be. I would hope it's at least the 2.
If it's smaller than that, they're going to have to call Pond.
Yeah.
Pond 2.
I don't know. There's an Ocean's Origin. There's Ocean's Original. There's Ocean's. I don't know. It's gonna be something. But I mean that could be cool because that'll be like 70s themed. You know when.
Yeah, it's going to be a period piece.
Yeah. Which is weird that the 70s and 80s and now 90s.
They can just keep going back and back and back. Ocean's -12, and they'll be like.
Watch Avatar.
They'll be wearing
Just watch
Shakespearean
shut
classical
up.
garb.
Watch Avatar. Watch it. This is an Avatar piece, by the way.
Nice.
You won't appreciate it.
I appreciate it. It looks Asian.
It is. It's an anime.
I appreciate it for that alone.
It's great. That's Iroh and Zuko under a tree drinking tea.
There you go. That's also very Asian.
Drinking tea.
I bet the tea is green.
It is. There's also a White Lotus tea. Iroh drinks a lot of tea.
I like the brown tea myself.
You want a little more brown tea?
No, I'm good.
You want ice?
No, thanks.
You want some coffee?
No.
I just want to offer you things.
I just want to keep turning them down until you offer me something I really want.
I've got some crystal meth in the back.
Bingo.
Nice.
Oh, okay.
Sorry, Mom.
So yeah, where were we? What were we talking about?
Bound festival circuit.
Oh yeah, so right now we've had some offers from some distributors, but I always wanted to play the festival circuit for a while. I thought it was important to get it on the big screen and in front of as many people as we can before anything.
Do you think that there is a world? So you mentioned that you want to kind of swing for the fences. It's a baseball metaphor, and go for the tier 1, tier 2. But you had
the tier 1s have. Most of them passed,
right?
Because I mean they've actually passed, because they
didn't have the premiere thing.
Sundance was 2 months after our festival or whatever, and so a month or 2 after our festival. So I had hoped that if they had been closer, we could have contacted Sundance and been like, hey, we got into this, but we'd rather premiere it here or that kind of a thing, but. I also just wanted to premiere in New York.
Yeah.
And I thought about this and we could have said no and most likely still not get into these other ones because they are allowing films with big names, and and there's 17,500 submissions.
Yeah.
It's like, so like we thought about it, and I said, you know what, Dances is a great festival. um we're gonna have to we're gonna promote it ourselves anyways, because it's still gonna have to start with us. The impetus still has to start with us. It will get us started, and we're gonna have two great houses, one or two great houses, because we're here, and it's gonna be all a bunch of fans. It's gonna be, so we went with that. So there are still some, like, yes, there's Con, we applied, but how many American films are they gonna take?
I don't know.
How many, and out of those two or three, how many are going to be directed by Scorsese or Aronofsky or
Right.
Fincher or whoever,
People who don't actually need it.
Yeah.
Like Scorsese and Fincher don't need acclaims from Sundance and Cannes and Tribeca. They don't need them, which is kind of frustrating, because those festivals, as you said, one day, like in the past, were built on no feature names, like bringing people up, 5-person crews.
They were about getting, helping the industry.
Yeah.
In that sense. And now a lot of it's about galas and premieres,
collecting trophies
and stuff. And so, like, and that's okay,
Collect your trophies, I get it, but like.
And so there's still a few more of those out there, but once you give up your world, unless you know somebody, unless you're best friends with the programmer or the festival director or that, but like for someone like me, that was my first film festival. Like, I don't know these people, and so we've done that. We're waiting to hear back from a slew of other really good festivals, but then again, they're all very difficult to get into.
Yeah.
The good ones, the top two, tier 1, tier 2 festivals. They get thousands and thousands and thousands of submissions. 2/3 of those submissions are going to go, the slots are going to go to shorts. Half of those, the remaining, are going to go to documentaries. Half of the remaining are going to go to comedies. We had somebody said, we loved your film, but we had like a ton of dramas, so we just couldn't program another drama. So, we programmed a horror or a comedy or another documentary or whatever, so that kind of a thing.
Yeah.
But while we're doing that, I started the process of meeting with these distributors, sales reps and producer reps, to help us get to distributors. And the film has gotten into some big names, but it's a small film, and they're upfront about that, and they're like, hey, we love this film, but it's small in the sense that you don't have an A-list name. So play the circuit.
Yeah.
Maybe get some awards, get some reviews, get your Rotten Tomatoes stuff up, like that. So so that's where we are with that.
Cool.
And we're starting to finalize who we might want to bring on to help us get to the other distributors that I have not able to get to myself.